Here's what nobody tells you about planning a wedding. Sometimes the person you think you know better than anyone turns out to be a complete stranger hiding something that will make your blood run cold. 6 months ago, I was supposed to get married. I had the venue booked, invitations printed, a dress that cost more than my monthly rent. But I'm not married, and I never will be to that man. Because what I found out about where his money was actually going didn't just end our relationship, it made me question every single moment we'd ever shared together. My name's Amy, and this is the story of how a simple request to cover our wedding expenses turned into the most shocking discovery of my life. Let me take you back to where this whole mess started. It was a Thursday night in March. Nothing special about the day, just another regular evening at home. My fiancé Ryan and I had been together for 4 years at that point. We met at a mutual friend's housewarming party, hit it off immediately, and within 6 months we were basically living together. He was funny, charming, had a good job in pharmaceutical sales, and treated me better than any guy I'd dated before. Or so I thought. We got engaged about a year before all of this went down. He proposed during a weekend trip to the mountains. It wasn't some elaborate public proposal with photographers and a crowd, just us on a hiking trail with a view that stretched for miles. Simple and perfect. That's who I thought Ryan was. Simple and perfect. So there we were on this random Thursday, sitting on opposite ends of the couch. I was scrolling through Pinterest looking at centerpiece ideas for the reception. Ryan was on his laptop, supposedly answering work emails. Then, out of nowhere, he closed his laptop and looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. "Hey, so I need to talk to you about something. About the wedding." I put my phone down. "Okay, what's up?" "I've been doing some thinking about the budget and everything, and I was wondering if maybe you could handle the costs. Like, all of it." I actually laughed. I genuinely thought he was setting up some kind of joke. "What do you mean, all of it?" I mean the whole wedding. The venue, catering, flowers, everything. I'm in a really tight spot with money right now, and I just need you to cover it." The smile fell off my face real fast. "Ryan, are you serious right now?" "Yeah, I'm serious. I know it's not ideal, but I promise I'll make it up to you after everything settles down with my finances." Now, here's what you need to understand about our financial situation. Ryan made decent money. Actually, he made more than decent money. He was pulling in around $85,000 a year, while I was making about $60,000 working as a school counselor. We'd always kept our finances mostly separate because we both liked having our independence, but we split rent and bills pretty evenly. So hearing him say he was broke made absolutely zero sense to me. "What do you mean you're in a tight spot? Did something happen with work?" "No, work's fine. It's just other expenses piling up. It's complicated." There's that phrase. It's complicated. That's what people say when they don't want to explain something because the explanation would reveal something they're trying to hide. But I didn't see that red flag waving right in front of my face. I was too busy trying to process what he was asking me to do. "How much are we talking about here?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe 25 to 30,000. That's pretty standard for a decent wedding, right?" $25 to $30,000. He said it like he was asking me to spot him $20 for lunch, like it was no big deal at all. "Ryan, I don't have $30,000 just sitting around. That's more than half my yearly salary." "I know, but you've got some savings, right? And you could probably get a loan for the rest. It's an investment in our future, in us." An investment in our future. Those words should have sounded romantic. Instead, they made my stomach twist into a knot, because what he was really asking me to do was go into massive debt for a party while he apparently sat back and contributed nothing. I should have said no right there. I should have told him that if he couldn't afford to help pay for the wedding, then we needed to either have a much smaller wedding or postpone it until we'd both saved up enough money. But here's the thing about being in love with someone, about building a life with them for 4 years. You start making excuses. You start thinking that maybe you're being selfish. Maybe this is just what you do when you're committed to someone. Maybe questioning it makes you the bad guy. So I said, okay. I actually said, okay. I agreed to pay for our entire wedding by myself because I was scared that saying no would make me seem unsupportive or cause him to call the whole thing off. And that decision kicked off a chain reaction that would eventually blow up my entire life. The very next day, I started researching. I called wedding planners, looked at venue prices, got quotes from caterers and photographers and florists. Every number I saw made my heart sink a little bit deeper. A halfway decent venue was running about $7,000 to $8,000 minimum. A good photographer wanted $3,000. Flowers for the ceremony and reception were looking like $2,000. Catering for our guest list of about 120 people was going to be at least $12,000. The dress I wanted was $2,000. And that wasn't even counting the DJ, the cake, the invitations, the decorations, or any of the million other tiny expenses that add up fast. I had about $15,000 in my savings account. That was money I'd been slowly building up over the past 5 years, money I'd been putting aside from every paycheck, thinking it would eventually be a down payment on a house, money that represented security and stability and future possibilities. Now, it was going to pay for one single day. For the other $15,000, I did exactly what Ryan suggested. I went to my bank and applied for a personal loan. The interest rate was not great because my credit was just okay, but I got approved. $15,000 deposited into my checking account within a week. Just like that, I was in debt. Real, serious debt that would take me years to pay off even if I never missed a payment. Ryan seemed relieved when I told him I'd figured out the financing. He gave me a hug and told me I was amazing and that he was so lucky to have me. For about 5 minutes, I felt good about my decision. Like maybe I really was being a supportive partner and this was just what people did when they were building a life together. But then things started getting weird. Really weird. And it happened so gradually that I didn't even notice at first because I was completely overwhelmed trying to plan an entire wedding by myself while also working full-time at a job that was emotionally draining on the best days. Ryan started going out more than usual. A lot more. He'd leave the apartment on Friday after work and sometimes not come back until late Saturday night. When I'd ask where he'd been, he'd give me vague answers. Out with some guys from work. Networking event. Birthday party for someone you don't know. Always something that sounded plausible enough that I didn't push back too hard. But the real thing that started bothering me was his spending. Ryan was buying stuff constantly. New clothes from expensive stores, new shoes, a new watch that I knew had to cost at least $1,000 because I'd seen similar ones online. He was going out to fancy restaurants and bars, coming home with receipts I'd occasionally find in his pockets when I was doing laundry. Places I'd never been to. Places that clearly weren't cheap. One night, in early May, about 6 weeks after he'd asked me to pay for the wedding, I finally said something. We were getting ready for bed, and he was showing me this new jacket he'd bought. Nice leather jacket. The kind that costs serious money. That's a really nice jacket. Yeah, I saw it and had to have it. I've been wanting a good leather jacket for a while. How much was it? Like $400, but it's an investment piece, you know? I'll have it forever. $400 on a jacket. While I was eating pasta and canned sauce for dinner 4 nights a week trying to save money. Ryan, didn't you tell me you were broke? That's why I'm paying for the entire wedding. His face changed immediately, went from happy and excited to defensive in about half a second. I'm managing my money. This is different. How is it different? Because it is. Look, I needed some new work clothes anyway. This counts as a work expense, basically. A leather jacket is a work expense for a pharmaceutical sales rep? Can we not do this right now? I've had a long day and I don't want to fight about a jacket. I'm not trying to fight. I'm just confused about how you can afford to buy expensive clothes but can't contribute anything to our wedding. He complained about his long day and went ahead and took off that jacket to start getting ready for bed. You know what? I don't need to justify my purchases to you. It's my money and I'll spend it how I want. He went into the bathroom and shut the door. Conversation over. I just stood there, feeling like somehow I was the one who'd done something wrong by asking a completely reasonable question. That fight was in early May. The wedding was scheduled for early October, which gave me about 5 months to finalize everything. I'd already spent close to $18,000 at that point. I still had to pay the final installments on the venue and caterer, buy my dress, pay the photographer's deposit, and handle about 20 other smaller expenses that kept popping up. Every time I looked at my bank account, I felt physically sick. Ryan and I were barely talking by this point, unless it was about surface-level stuff. He was gone more than he was home. When he was home, he was usually on his phone or laptop, always busy with something he never really explained. We'd gone from being a couple who told each other everything to basically being roommates who happened to share a bed. But I kept telling myself it was just wedding stress. That things would get better after we were married and life settled down. Then, one day in mid-June, Ryan came home and told me he'd invited one of his work buddies over for dinner, a guy named Matt who I'd never met before. I wasn't exactly thrilled about having to make dinner for a stranger when I was exhausted from work and stressed about wedding planning, but I agreed because that's what you do, right? Matt showed up right on time. He seemed nice enough. Tall guy, kind of loud, the type who tells a lot of jokes. We sat around our small dining table, eating the chicken and vegetables I'd thrown together, and Matt talked about work stuff I didn't really understand or care about. Sales numbers and client meetings and territory assignments. But then, while Ryan was in the kitchen getting more drinks, Matt said something that made my brain start working in a way it hadn't in months. So Ryan tells me the wedding's coming up in October. That's exciting. You guys must be in full planning mode. Yeah, it's been pretty intense. Lots of details to figure out. I bet. My wife and I got married 3 years ago, and the planning nearly killed us. So expensive, too. We ended up spending about $35,000, but at least we split it evenly, so neither of us went broke. He said it casually. Not like he was trying to make a point, just normal conversation. But something about those words hit different. At least we split it evenly. Yeah. That's smart, I said, watching Ryan come back into the room with beers. For sure. I mean, unless there's like a huge income difference, but even then you'd probably work out something fair. That's what most couples do, right? Ryan sat back down, and his jaw looked tight, like he was clenching his teeth. Actually, Amy's handling most of the wedding finances. We decided it was easier to have one person in charge of the finances. Matt raised his eyebrows a little bit, but didn't say anything else. The conversation moved on to sports or something, and the rest of dinner was fine. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Matt said, about splitting things evenly, about what most couples do, about what's fair. After Matt left, I brought it up with Ryan. Why did you tell Matt I'm handling the wedding finances like it was a mutual decision? You asked me to pay for everything because you said you were broke. Same difference. Does it really matter how I phrased it? Yeah, it does matter, because you made it sound like we agreed this was the best way to do things, when really you just dumped the entire financial burden on me. I didn't dump anything on you. You agreed to do it. Because you told me you had no other option. You said you were in a tight spot financially. And I am. And I am. Then explain to me how you can afford to buy $400 jackets and go out every weekend and get a new watch and new shoes and everything else you've been buying. I'm not having this conversation again. You're being ridiculous. He walked out of the room, just left me standing there. And that's when something finally clicked in my brain. Something was very, very wrong here. Ryan wasn't broke. He was spending money constantly, which meant he was lying to me. But why? Where was all his money actually going? I spent the next 2 days trying to figure out how to get answers without directly snooping through his stuff. But by day 3, I gave up on being respectful of his privacy. Because we were supposed to be getting married in 4 months. We were supposed to be building a life together. And you can't build a life with someone who's actively lying to you about something as important as money. So I did something I'm still not entirely proud of, but I also don't regret it. I waited until Ryan left for work one morning, and then I started searching through our apartment. I checked his nightstand drawers, nothing interesting, just old receipts, some random papers, phone chargers. I checked his dresser drawers, just clothes. I looked in the closet, under the bed, in the bathroom cabinets. Nothing that gave me any answers. Then I remembered that Ryan kept a filing cabinet in the corner of our bedroom. He'd always told me it was just work stuff and old documents. I'd never had any reason to look through it before. But now I opened it up and started going through the folders. Tax returns from previous years, car insurance documents, old pay stubs, medical bills, all normal stuff. Then I found a folder near the back that was labeled Statements. Inside were bank statements. Lots of them. Going back about 2 years. And they weren't for the checking account I knew Ryan had. This was a different account. An account I'd never heard him mention before in the 4 years we'd been together. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and did what any person would do in that moment. I Googled the name along with our city. The first result that came up was a Facebook profile. Jennifer Hartley. I clicked on it. The profile was mostly private, but I could see her profile picture. She was pretty, probably in her late 20s or early 30s. Long dark hair, big smile. And then I saw something that made the entire world feel like it was tilting sideways. Her most recent public post was a photo from 2 weeks ago, a picture of her standing on a beach somewhere tropical. And standing right next to her, with his arm around her waist, was Ryan. The caption said, "Best vacation ever with my favorite person." I sat on that bedroom floor for probably an hour, just staring at that photo, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, trying to come up with some explanation that wasn't the obvious one. But there was no other explanation. Ryan had a whole other life that I knew nothing about. He had another woman. He'd been sending her thousands of dollars every month. He'd been going on vacations with her while telling me he was at work conferences or out with friends. Everything about our relationship had been a lie. Everything. I took pictures of all the bank statements with my phone. Then I screenshot the Facebook photos. I wanted evidence, proof that I wasn't imagining this, that this was really happening. When Ryan got home from work that evening, I was sitting on the couch with all the bank statements spread out on the coffee table in front of me. He walked in the door, saw the papers, and his face went completely white. "What are you doing with those? Who's Jennifer Hartley?" He didn't say anything, just stood there in the doorway looking like he might throw up. "Who is she, Ryan?" "It's not what you think." "Then what is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been sending thousands of dollars a month to another woman while I'm going into debt to pay for our wedding. It looks like you've been taking vacations with her while lying to me about where you are. So please, tell me what this is if it's not what I think." "She's just a friend." "You send friends $2,000 a month?" "She's been going through a hard time. She needed help." "What kind of help?" "Financial help. She lost her job and has been struggling to pay rent." So you've been supporting another woman financially while telling me you're too broke to help pay for our own wedding? It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. He sat down on the chair across from me, put his head in his hands, and then he said something that I don't think I'll ever be able to unhear. She's pregnant. The room started spinning. What? Jennifer's pregnant with my baby. She's 6 months along. I couldn't speak, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. It was a mistake. It happened last year at a work conference. We'd both been drinking, and it just happened. I was going to tell you, but then I found out she was pregnant, and everything got complicated. You've been cheating on me for over a year? It wasn't like that. It was one time, and then she told me she was pregnant, and I couldn't just abandon her. So you've been paying for her rent and her expenses and going on vacation with her and lying to me every single day for months? I was trying to figure out how to tell you. I just needed time. Time for what? Time to string me along until after the wedding? Were you even planning to leave her, or were you going to marry me while having a whole other family on the side? I don't know. I didn't have a plan. I was just trying to handle everything. By making me pay for our wedding while you used your money to support your pregnant girlfriend? He didn't have an answer for that, because there was no explanation that could make any of this okay. I stood up, grabbed my phone and my keys, and walked toward the door. Where are you going? Anywhere that's not here. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't try to explain or apologize or make this better. We're done. The wedding is off. I never want to see you again. I walked out and drove straight to my best friend Carla's house. When she opened the door and saw my face, she pulled me inside immediately. What happened? I told her everything, the whole story from start to finish. By the time I was done talking, we were both crying. Oh my God, Amy, I'm so sorry. That's so messed up. I wasted 4 years on him. I went into debt for him, and the whole time he was living a completely different life. What are you going to do? I don't know. Cancel the wedding, I guess. Try to get some of my money back. Figure out how to move forward. The next few weeks were probably the worst of my entire life. I had to call everyone we'd invited and tell them the wedding was canceled. I had to contact all the vendors. Most of them wouldn't give me a refund since it was less than 4 months out. The venue kept $4,000. The caterer kept $2,000. The photographer kept $1,000. Altogether, I lost about $9,000 just in cancellation fees. I moved out of the apartment Ryan and I shared, got a small studio apartment that I could barely afford, started seeing a therapist because I was having panic attacks every time I thought about how completely I'd been deceived. I also looked into whether I could sue Ryan for the money I spent on the wedding, talked to a lawyer who basically told me that unless I had something in writing saying he'd pay me back, there wasn't much I could do. It would be really hard to prove that the money was a loan and not a gift. So I was just out all that money. $15,000 in debt from the loan, $9,000 lost to cancellation fees, my entire savings gone. All because I'd trusted someone who turned out to be a completely different person than I thought he was. I found out later, through people we both knew, that Jennifer had the baby, a girl. Ryan moved in with her about a month after I left. Last I heard, they're trying to make it work as a family. I hope for that baby's sake they do better than he did with me, but honestly, I doubt it. Because someone who can lie that completely, who can live a double life that thoroughly, isn't going to suddenly become honest and trustworthy just because there's a kid involved. As for me, it took a long time to recover from all of this. The financial hit was devastating. I'm still paying off that loan and probably will be for another few years. I had to pick up extra work tutoring on weekends just to make ends meet. I canceled my gym membership, stopped going out to eat, gave up pretty much anything that wasn't essential. But the emotional damage was worse than the financial damage, because Ryan didn't just lie to me about money. He lied about everything. About who he was, about what our relationship meant, about our future together. And that kind of betrayal changes you. It makes you question everything. It makes you wonder how you could have been so blind, how you could have missed all the signs that were probably there the whole time. Looking back now, I can see things I should have noticed. The way he'd sometimes be weirdly secretive about his phone, how he'd occasionally mention places he'd been or things he'd done and then act confused when I'd bring them up later, like he'd forgotten he told me. The way he'd get defensive whenever I asked about money. All those little red flags that I explained away because I trusted him, because I loved him, because I thought we were building something real together. The hardest part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was realizing that the person I thought I knew didn't actually exist. The Ryan I loved was just a character he was playing, a role he had created. The real Ryan was someone I never knew at all. It's been almost a year now since everything fell apart. I'm doing better. Not great, but better. I'm still in therapy, still paying off debt, still living in my tiny studio apartment, still trying to figure out how to trust people again. But I'm also stronger than I was before, because going through something like this forces you to learn things about yourself, about what you're capable of surviving, about what you actually need versus what you thought you needed. I learned that I don't need a relationship to be okay. I don't need someone else to make me feel complete or valuable or worthy. I learned that I'd rather be alone and honest with myself than be with someone and living in a lie. I also learned to trust my instincts, because the truth is, I had doubts. I had questions. I had moments where I felt like something was off, but I ignored those feelings because I didn't want to seem paranoid or untrusting or difficult. I wanted to be the cool, understanding girlfriend who didn't make waves, and that desire to be easygoing almost cost me everything. So if there's anything I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. If someone's asking you to sacrifice while they're clearly not sacrificing, pay attention to that. If you're going into debt while they're buying expensive things, ask questions, demand answers. Don't make excuses for behavior that doesn't make sense. And if someone ever asks you to pay for an entire wedding by yourself while claiming they're broke, run. Just run, because that's not normal. That's not what people who love and respect you do. That's what people who are using you do. I wish I could tell you that Ryan eventually apologized or tried to pay me back or showed any remorse for what he did, but he didn't. The last time I heard from him was about 2 months after I moved out. He sent me one text message that said, "I'm sorry things ended the way they did. I hope you can move on and be happy." That's it. That's all I got after 4 years and $30,000 and a completely shattered sense of trust. A generic apology text that didn't even acknowledge what he'd actually done. But you know what? I'm glad I found out when I did. Because imagine if I'd actually married him. Imagine if I'd legally tied myself to someone who was capable of that level of deception. Imagine if we'd had kids together, bought a house together, built an entire life together before I discovered the truth. $30,000 is a lot of money. It's money I'll be paying back for years. But in a weird way, it was worth it. Because it bought me the truth. It showed me who Ryan really was before I made the biggest mistake of my life. So yeah, I'm still angry, I'm still hurt, I still have moments where I think about everything that happened and I feel like I can't breathe, but I'm also grateful. Grateful that I found out, grateful that I got away, grateful that I have the chance to build a real life with someone honest someday, or to build a good life by myself if that's how things work out. because anything is better than living a lie. Hit subscribe if this story made you think twice about red flags.